President Trump is pushing back against talk of impeachment after he was implicated by his former attorney, Michael Cohen. His argument? There would be serious consequences.
I don't know how you can impeach somebody who's done a great job. I'll tell you what, if I ever got impeached, I think the market would crash. I think everybody would be very poor, because without this thinking, you would see numbers that you wouldn't believe.
The president's current attorney seems to echo the same sentiments. Here's what Rudy Giuliani told Sky News earlier.
I think impeachment would be totally horrible. I mean, there's no reason. He didn't collude with the Russians. He didn't obstruct justice. Everything Cohen says has been disproved. You'd only impeach him for political reasons, and the American people would revolt against that. Thank you.
And joining me now is the founder of the Need To Impeach campaign, Tom Steyer. He's in San Francisco. Tom, thanks for being with us. You founded the Need To Impeach campaign, and your team has been saying it's time for Democrats to talk seriously about impeaching the president. Why is this so important to you? And secondly, do you think recent developments with Manafort and Cohen move those efforts forward?
Well, Tanya, our attitude towards impeachment is very simple, which is, are we telling the truth, and are we standing up for the American democracy and the American people? That's why it's so important to me, because I think it's very important that the American people have a voice in protecting their democracy and getting rid of a reckless, dangerous, and lawless president.
And so do you think...
If you ask me...
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
Sorry, there's a little bit of a delay.
You were asking whether Tuesday made a difference. And I think what happened on Tuesday, prior to that, there had been ample evidence, and we'd asked 58 constitutional scholars specifically whether this president had met the criteria for impeachment. And we put on the web their answer, which is that he has, on 9 separate grounds, met the criteria for impeachment. But what happened on Tuesday was that two of his closest associates were certified by our justice system as criminals, and one of them implicated Mr. Trump directly. So whereas prior to that there had been more than ample evidence to show that he had met the criteria to be impeached, on Tuesday the justice system itself made it clear that in fact he was directly implicated in felony crimes.
Now, Tom, many Democratic leaders believe focusing on impeachment right now could hinder their efforts to win control of Congress. How would you respond to that?
Well, Tanya, in a couple of ways. The first one is to go back to what I said originally, which is we think it's really important that the American people have a chance to raise their voices, to tell the truth, and to protect our democracy and their own safety and health. So we're looking at something much broader than short-term political, tactical considerations that the Washington establishment seems absolutely fixated on. Secondly, we actually, we went back and asked Republicans directly in a polling, is this one of the issues that is top of mind for you? And actually, it's not one of the top 3 issues that Republican voters are fixated on. It's not even close. And if you look at the ads that Republican office seekers are running this fall, none of them has to do with impeachment whatsoever. So actually what we're seeing is a Washington establishment that for its own reasons does not want to deal with the most important political truth in our nation, which is that we have a reckless, dangerous, and lawless president, and that we need to protect our democracy and stand up for the American people.
Now, many who would agree with you on that characterization of the current administration say removing the president from office isn't the answer, because even if Mr. Trump is impeached, it won't change much because of the current state of the Republican Party. What would you say to that?
Well, I would say that impeachment is not about policy. This isn't because the 5.5 million people who've signed our petition don't agree with the Republican or the administration's tax policy. This is a question about protecting our system itself. The Constitution only gives us one straightforward remedy for removing a reckless, dangerous, and lawless president. And that's really what we're trying to do. This is not a partisan issue, although it has been cast that way a great deal. This is a question of patriotism. Will the American people stand up and protect our democracy and make sure that the rule of law continues in the United States? Because if we don't have a democracy, if we don't have a rule of law, all kinds of terrible things will happen.
So you say it's not a partisan issue. Do you expect Republicans to get on board with your movement?
Well, first of all, let me say that if you go through the mechanics of impeachment, it has to be a bipartisan issue. In order to remove this president, ultimately, we need Republican office holders as well as Democratic office holders to agree that he has to go. But I think what's most important about this is the American people themselves, the voice of the people, and that's whether they're Democrats, Republicans, or independents. Now, really what we're doing, we're running a petition drive to sign up American citizens. We're not asking them what party they're in. We think the only real source of power here, the ultimate source of power, and the people who should hold the cards are the American people. So we're really trying to get their voices together to insist that the voters be listened to, not going to the halls of Congress to lobby people or anything like that, really trying to empower the voters themselves.
Now, on a slightly different topic, there's been a lot of criticism from the left of the Koch brothers and big money donors in the Republican Party, but some, like yourself, have also spent a lot of money supporting candidates as well. Are you concerned that your contributions undermine the argument that big money in politics is a pervasive problem?
Well, Tanya, let me start by saying that I'm personally feel that Citizens United was a terrible decision, that money is corrupting American politics, and that we have to reform our system of elections. And so I'm very aware of the need of getting big money out of politics. Having said that, we're working with the system and the laws that we have now. And what we've done to try to make this as clean and straightforward a way of acting as possible is the following. One, I'm completely transparent. I'm here talking to you. I try and tell people what I'm doing. I try and disclose everything, which is completely different from the Koch brothers. Second of all, nothing that I'm doing in any way helps my income or my bottom line or aggrandizes me. And that is also something that is completely different from the big Republican money, the big corporate money in politics, which is absolutely advocating for positions that help their bottom line and help them. And the third thing is this. You described me as supporting candidates. Actually, what we do in every part of our operation is try to push power down to the American people. And that involves registering voters, trying to engage voters in conversations with each other on the issues of the day, and encouraging participation at the polls. We are trying to push as much, the broadest possible democracy in America. In this case, we're doing a petition drive to join the voices of 5.5 million Americans, so they have to be listened to, but they're the people whose voices count. We're really talking about either the broadest democracy or direct democracy, where the voters themselves are heard. And I think that's entirely different than supporting candidates or using big money to try and get things that you want.
And Tom, climate change is another very important issue to you. Do you think, though, that pitting your state, California, against the administration helps achieve policy goals that are helpful for the environment?
Well, let me say this. I think that pollution and climate change are an issue where this administration's propensity to lie and to make policy to support their big money donors is the most obvious. Clean energy today is cheaper than fossil fuel energy. It will create literally millions of net jobs for working Americans, and it will mean better air for literally millions of people, and specifically people in low-income communities and communities of color. So when I look at a question where we can move forward and lead the world on a very rapidly growing industry, which will also make us better employed, richer and healthier. And I see a political party and an administration routinely lying in order to enact policies to protect their big money corporate fossil fuel donors. I find that an absolutely perfect example of what I think of as the hostile corporate takeover of our democracy. It's the worst kind of behavior.
And Tom, we have to ask you, are you thinking of a presidential bid in 2020?
Well, Tanya, in addition to getting over 5.5 million people to sign up on this petition drive, and we're trying to make that drive a movement. We're trying to get all of those people to vote on November 6th, which is Election Day, and normally only about a third of them would. We also are running the largest youth voter mobilization program in American history between now and November 6th, once again to try and get millions of Americans to show up the polls so we'll have a broader democracy. And with all of that, we have no idea what's going to happen on Election Day 2018. So I'm going to be head down, working as hard as I can to try and get good things to happen this Election Day. And the day after the Election Day, we'll start to figure out, I will personally think, what is the best thing that I can do, given what happened on Election Day, to push the cause of justice in America after that. And I don't know what it will be, because I don't know what's going to happen on Election Day.
All right, but that's not a no.
That is I am going to not even think about it until we get through the work we're doing now and understand where we are.
All right, Tom Steyer, thank you so much for your time today.
Okay, Tanya, such a pleasure.